Hello, welcome to Living in the Good Space, a video podcast of conversations on thriving wherever you are in life. My name is Annette Johnson, the Fly Coach, and I am the producer and host. I am very excited to have a conversation with my guest today on how to facilitate healing using therapy as a self-care strategy. Olivia Curl is a licensed clinical social worker. She has a master's in social work from Columbia University, and her bachelor's is in psychology from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She is a supervisor of therapeutic services program and a therapist with IFS Telehealth Collective. And we'll talk about what that is, and we'll share the website for that organization. She's experienced also in relationship abuse prevention, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So when I Googled Olivia, this is what I found that describes her approach as a therapist, and I just absolutely love it, and I want to share this. It says, Olivia's approach as a therapist is warm and engaging. She treats everyone with respect. She doesn't assign stigmatizing labels. Her work is client-centered, trauma-informed, and anti-oppressive. Olivia helps her clients understand themselves better and to heal parts of themselves that need their attention most. I'm here for all of that and more. I invited Olivia to share her knowledge and expertise today as a therapist in hopes that my listeners will hear something that empowers them or inspires them to go a little bit deeper in terms of their healing journey. So let me, or help me, welcome Olivia Curl. Olivia!
Hi.
How are you, my dear?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. You know, I'm so excited to have you as a guest today. Thank you so much
Yes.
for accepting my invitation. And, you know, it's kind of strange because I feel like I've known you forever, but we won't go down that path today.
Right.
But I'm really excited about the work that you're doing, especially as a Black woman in the field of therapy. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, and so I wanted to bring you on today to share your expertise. To talk about, you know, what you're doing, what you're learning, discovering, and to share information that's going to empower, inspire my listeners to consider therapy as a self-care strategy. It's a self-care strategy for me.
Yes.
And so I'm so excited about my own growth and
Mhm.
my own healing journey that I just want everybody to experience what I've experienced. So let's jump right in. And of
Perfect.
course, my first question to you, the obvious, is what inspired you to become a therapist?
That's a great question. It really stems from my upbringing, messages from family, and just I think like a core part of who I am. Growing up, my maternal grandmother had suffered from severe mental illness, and growing up, I was always told that I looked like her. And so when I was young, I actually had a really big fear that I would
Mm,
have some type of severe mental illness as well. So that got me really curious into thinking about the brain, researching mental health. And it was something I became very passionate about.
mhm,
Just natural personality traits. I was always someone that my friends would go to that loved to have conversations. I'm someone too that processes through talking things out, through getting those um, big feelings out verbally. And
mhm,
so it kind of naturally led me into this field. When I went to undergrad, I went the typical route of psychology. But funny enough, when I was there, some of my most intriguing classes and the classes that felt closest to home were my marriage and family therapy classes and
mm,
coursework, where we really got into not just thinking about the brain, as psychology sometimes does, but really thinking of the context in which people live in, right? So, how does someone's relationship with their family affect their mental health? Their sex lives, their relationship with drugs and alcohol. It really created a full picture for me. And I really lended more to that holistic type of thinking.
mhm.
And thanks to some mentors in my life that led me down the path of social work, which I could not be prouder to be a social worker and to be a clinical social worker at that and helping people along their journey.
Mm. You know, it's funny because when you talked about your fears, that's one of the things that led me to go into seek out a therapist. I
Mm,
had tried to do it years and years ago, couldn't find the right connection, and I want to talk about that a little bit with you today too. I just didn't seem to connect with the people that I had been referred to, and then I finally found a woman, a Black woman around my age, and that made a big difference for me because I felt like this is somebody who looks like me. We've had some similar experiences, and so that helped me to become more comfortable. Having the tough conversations that I
yeah.
that I had to have. But tell me, now that you've been doing this for a couple of years, right? What do you like most about what you're doing?
What I like most. I love being a part of people's journey to healing. Um, I like being able to talk to people through some of the things that they're struggling with, empowering them to make decisions for their lives that work best for them, giving people alternative ways of thinking about the things that they're going through currently in their lives. I also supervise a number of clinicians, and I really enjoy that work as well, right? When you supervise, it's a little bit different from being one on one and doing
Mhm.
individual work, and that we like to think of it as individual work is when you're on the field, you're playing the game, you're live in action, but supervising is like reviewing the game field tapes, right? I
Right.
get to take a step back, look at the larger picture, really see and help other clinicians pick out the themes, work through like counter transference that are coming up for them with their clients. And that's also another thing that I love to do. So I feel like I'm in a nice little um, niche here where I get to have that one-on-one work with clients, which I love, but I also get to help therapists hone in on their skills and help their clients as well.
Wow.
So I think that all of those things really have accumulated to me being in a good spot career-wise and loving what I do.
Yeah, and I like the words that you use, those adjectives, because when I went into therapy, I think I was thinking that the therapist was going to like solve my problems for me. I know this sounds crazy, but I kind of had this expectation that she was going to give me the answers.
Yep.
And I was surprised that I had to do the work. You know what I mean? Like I had to do some soul searching. I had to dig deep. I mean, she would give me some assignments and some questions to ponder, but I had to do the work.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering for you, do you find any challenges in particular that you have to kind of navigate in this space?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be real with you. Vicarious trauma is a real thing, right? And vicarious trauma means for someone to experience trauma through hearing or listening to other traumatic events that other people have experienced. And that's something real. And I think it's something that many clinicians struggle with. And it's one of those things that like a behind the scene things that many clients don't necessarily know is happening, but it can be hard to listen to several instances of really severe traumatic experiences day in and day out on a weekly basis. I would say that's one of the most challenging things. The other challenging things are just those moments, right? I think similar to what you were saying earlier, and we'll touch on later. One of the most powerful therapeutic tools is the therapeutic relationship. So just the relationships that I have with my clients, right? And it could be very, very difficult in those moments where there isn't a solution. I don't have any answers. There isn't some magic pill or a recipe that I can give clients and say, go home and do this, and all of your problems will be solved.
Right.
Some of the things really is just sitting with clients in their pain and in their
Mhm.
times of struggle and trouble. And that could be hard because in my heart, of course, I want clients to be able to overcome whatever that situation is or be relieved from that moment of turmoil. And there's not always a solution to that.
That's powerful because the relationship is very important. Like I said, I had kind of bounced around a little bit, and then I had that connection, and that was it. But what I discovered was so I'm going to be fully transparent with my listeners. I went into therapy because I wanted to heal the relationship with my mom. I've
Mm,
talked about this. I do advocacy work for organizations that provide support to women and children who have experienced, intimate partner violence or domestic violence. And so I grew up in a very violent household. And so I went into therapy because I wanted to heal that,
Yeah.
because it affected my view, my perspective of my mom in
Hmm.
that situation. But the point I'm trying to make is the therapist affirmed for me that that was a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And she shared this term with me, post traumatic stress disorder, that I thought only applied to people in the military.
Hmm. Common misconception. Hmm.
So when she said it, it was like, what?
Yep.
So trauma, it's nice to hear you talk about the realness of trauma. And my question to you is, and this may sound like a silly question, but is there a time period on it? Because people have said to me, but that happened to you when you were 9 and 10 years old. Why are you still talking about it now? Why does it still have an effect on you now?
Yeah.
And it does. I don't know how else to answer that.
Yep. There is no time limit on symptoms. There's no time limit on processing. But I do think that's the key piece, right? And why many folks will go through something when they're very young. And our body does a really good job of working to heal itself, right? Our bodies will develop different coping strategies and things to allow us to move through life in a functional way, right? But some of those coping mechanisms also don't allow us to maybe process what happens, but we kind of put them in a little corner, a little box. We ignore them for a long time, which again is what our body needed to do in that moment for us to get by, for us to get through those challenging moments. And it's not until maybe we get into a spot where things aren't so hectic around us, or we enter into a relationship that reminds us or activates those memories from when we were a child, or we have an interaction that takes us back to that moment, that we realize, oh, wait a second, like I
Yeah,
thought that this was something I've done with, or, again, that was so long ago. So why is this coming up
yeah,
now? And it's oftentimes because we never really have time to process it. We don't, although our bodies are natural to coping with things, our society isn't, right? We don't
mhm,
have built into our society the conversations and the processing and the healing from traumatic events that should hopefully be in place, which is why I have a job and why my
right,
role exists, right? Because
right,
folks need help with that. Folks need a place to go to really get out the things that have happened to them, the things that are still happening to them,
mhm,
and the
mhm.
things that they're afraid will happen in the future.
Yeah. And that process helped me to connect some dots for myself when I look back over my life and how relationships have been affected, how I was showing up. It was like, oh my goodness, like it all makes sense to me now. It's not an excuse to continue being that way,
Yes.
but it definitely became a mirror right here
Mhm.
in
Yep.
my face that allowed me to see myself for who I really am,
Mhm.
and to help me create a new narrative
Yeah.
for myself and a new description for myself as a woman.
Yeah.
So you're an IFS therapist, right? Can you
Mhm.
explain to us what that means, and what do you do?
Yeah. So IFS stands for Internal Family Systems, which is a transformative, evidence based psychotherapy that helps people in accessing and loving their protective and wounded inner parts. So
Mhm,
IFS believes that our body, similar again, we have many parts that come up for us, right? Similarly, like before this podcast started, I had a little anxious and nervous part that was like, this is my first podcast. Am I going to do well? Am I going to, really help people understand what therapy is?
mhm,
And it's about creating that relationship with those parts, some understanding about how those parts function in our system,
mhm,
and creating a pathway of healing, of accessing our self energy or that compassion and love towards these different parts of our system that really, again, work as a whole so that we can live the lives that we want to live, right? That anxious part protects me so that I was feeling a little more prepared. I got myself ready. I poured positive energy into myself so that I would feel confident coming into this space. And it really did its job. And that's really what IFS works to do. It works to look at the different parts of folks that come up, the parts that need healing, the parts that need a little bit of attention, and facilitating that conversation and journey towards healing with those parts.
Wow, I think you gave me the whole definition and vision and mission and purpose of living in the good space.
Yeah.
You know, I spent a lot of time trying to articulate what does this mean living in the good space? And I think, you know, what you just said is kind of like I'm thinking to myself, that's it. Like that's my vision for this is to share information, to bring the experts, right, to a conversation that starts with me, right? Because I want to benefit, I want to heal, I want to grow, but also that extends, you know, beyond just me to other people. Because I say to myself all the time, girl, you cannot be the only one. Like, you just can't. Like,
Mhm.
stop thinking you're the only one
Yep.
that's going through this and that's in this space.
Yes.
Because maybe not everybody is comfortable being as transparent as I am and sharing. But I know, especially through my work with the advocacy work that I do against domestic violence, I know how deep these wounds go and how powerful the pain is. But I also know, being on the other side, how empowering it is, right, to
Mhm.
do that work and to be free, you know, free from that pain.
Yes.
So share with us, like, I'm coming to you for the first time as a client. What's a typical kind of first meeting?
Yeah. My first meeting with folks, first I go over the basics of a therapeutic practice, which are like confidentiality, which is a
Hmm.
big thing for folks and something that we might think is implicit and everyone knows, but it's something that we really like to name, right? And those three things typically are, everything that is said in my space with the client stays in that space. However, there are three exceptions. And that is if someone's physically harming you, if you're threatening to harm someone, or you're threatening to harm yourself. And those things are a part of many people's lives. And it's not something that I discourage clients from talking about in our space.
Hmm.
However, my main goal is to keep everyone safe, but especially my clients safe.
Yeah.
And I also come from the position that, again, I'm client centered. So that would mean that I would never have a conversation behind my client's back and create action or create a turn of events for them that they wouldn't be aware of. It would just open up additional conversations, that where we might want to bring in some additional people to create safety and help for that person. So that's first and foremost of some of the things that I go over. Then I really look to find out what's bringing them there at that moment in time, what their experience is like in therapy, if they've ever had therapy before. I also, again, is someone that really looks at person in context. So I am
Mhm.
someone who, although the initial reason for coming is very important, and we definitely get to that work, I also like to look at where that person is in their life.
Mhm.
And that can mean, what is your job like? How is job satisfaction? What's your relationship like with your peers? Do you have a friend support system? What is your relationship like with your parents? What was it like growing up? What was their relationship like with their
Yeah.
parents, right? I always like to go a couple generations up and below. If you have children, what is your relationship like with your kids?
Yeah.
Have you struggled with substances or alcohol? What is that experience like? What do you do for fun? What do you do for healing? What have you done in the past to try to fix this problem that feels, so present now and in this time? And really try to get a blanket of kind of where this person is in their experience, because again, I think all of those things add into the context of what's going on for you. As you said, when we go through a traumatic event, we might think like, oh, I just need to come in here to work on, let's say, I was in this car accident and I just need to work on my fear of getting into another car. But we don't realize that because I had this fear of getting into another car, now I don't see my parents as much because I'm the only person
Yes.
who can drive. And now my kids are missing out on extracurriculars because I can't take them to go pick them up. Or, I'm not sleeping at night because all I can think about and replaying that car accident. And so I'm not doing well in my job and work performance. So one small issue or traumatic events can have so many effect into other areas of our lives. And so I think it's really important to have that holistic view of what's going on.
And let me tell you, you just transported me back to my meetings with my therapist, and I miss her. You know what? After this, I may just schedule an appointment just for the heck of it, because
Yeah.
it was a time where I had never felt as seen and heard as I felt with her in my entire life,
Yep.
because she did just that. The questions that she asked, and I mean, just listening to me and just allowing, it was just a space, a safe space where I was allowed to share with no judgment.
Mhm.
And she, like I said, she helped me connect the dots, but I felt seen and heard for the first time in my life. I've always kind of felt misunderstood, like people don't really get me, don't
Yeah.
really understand me. And it was the first time that I felt like, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yep.
You know, I'm not abnormal. You know, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yep.
You know, I'm having these experiences. The experiences don't define me. The experiences are a part of my life. And I can choose to chart a new path, create a new narrative, build a new or different life experience for myself.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on such a key point, right? In that part of therapy is creating that space of non-judgment, right? Of creating a space where we really can be true and bring those parts. And one thing I always say, the therapeutic relationship is the only relationship you'll ever have that's one-sided. And I
Mm,
think that is something key to why therapy is important, right? A lot of people will say, well, I have friends in my life, or I
mm,
have a decent relationship with my parents or my family, my siblings, right? Like I can just talk to them. But every other relationship in our lives is reciprocal, right? It's give and take. I listen to your problems, you listen to mine. That also comes with sometimes prejudgments or ideas and thoughts about what we want for those people we love, right? When someone comes to us about an issue, the person that we care about the most, right, is that friend. So we might say what we think is in the best interest of that
right.
person, right? But the therapeutic relationship is the only relationship you'll ever have that's completely about you and your needs and what's going to be best for you, right? And that's something too that I love to provide to clients is a space where they know that they can mention, speaking of intimate partner violence, which I work
Mhm,
closely with that population. I'm not ready to leave my partner who's maybe causing harm, which is
mhm,
a big thing for folks. It's something
right,
that folks have so much shame around, prevents them from talking and speaking to others about because they know that as soon as I mention this, they're going to tell me, well, I need to leave right now. And to be able to have a space that says, like, it's okay if you want to stay, right? I understand that. I see you, I
yeah,
hear you,
yeah.
is so important, and it's needed.
You know, that was one of my struggles with my mom's situation, is because I didn't understand the staying. And that's a huge judgment that people make. Well, the woman must like it, or she must want it, or, you know, the woman could leave if she wants to leave. Like, you know, all these judgments are around why women stay. And that was one of the key turning points for me in therapy, was understanding that piece. And it allowed me to see my mom in a completely different way,
Yeah.
just by getting clarity around that judgment, you
Yeah.
know, and also discovering that I had a lot of shame around it, right?
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. I was ashamed that my mom, my mother, was going through this and experiencing this. I want to talk to you about the topic of depression
Yeah.
and what that, like, how do you know whether you're experiencing a moment of depression
Mhm.
versus you've got a bigger issue with depression, if I'm making sense, like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what you're kind of touching on is sometimes there's maybe like I would even say three types of depression. There's seasonal depression, which I
Mhm,
think has right become a lot more prevalent and people are talking about this a lot more, which
mhm,
is, in those winter months when the sun goes down really early, the weather is cold outside, we're not being as social, we're really more in a period of isolation that can
yeah,
cause a lot of signs and symptoms of depression. And it comes every year around the same time. We
mhm,
notice, we're either eating a little bit more, we're not eating as much, we're sleeping in or not getting sleep,
mhm,
and we're feeling really low, maybe some intrusive thoughts, right? So that's one form. There's also situational depression, right? So I just went through a really hard breakup. I lost someone near and dear to me.
mhm,
Um, what else? I'm just going through bodily changes or, transitional changes, right? That can again bring on those similar feelings. And then the third is what we would consider more of like a chronic or chemical depression, where some folks are just born with less hormones in their body and less endorphins that allow them to fall into lower mood states more often and
Mhm.
in a more sequenced way, right? So it's not something that they will deal with one time and then never experience again, but something that they will deal with throughout their lives at different periods and times. And I think your question was, right, like, how do we know if we're
Yeah.
experiencing depression, right? And I kind of say anyone and everyone can experience depression. Again, being that there are so many different forms of it, it can happen to anyone really. No one is immune to what
Mhm.
depression is, right? The happiest person that we know could also experience depression.
Mhm.
The thing that I pick out the most for when people are experiencing depression, or I like to have conversations around, is when those feelings interact with their ability to live their lives, right? So when we are not enjoying the things that we used to enjoy, when we find that we're having real difficult getting out of bed and having that motivation to shower, to
Yeah.
eat, or again the opposite of that, like we are eating a lot and feeding those emotions, maybe our house becomes a little more in disarray. We don't have that energy to get up and clean. We stop
Mhm.
talking to the people that we love and care about. Those are the moments and times where I begin to think that we want to seek out some help and support, right? It's
Mhm.
not, again, that I don't want to say that something's wrong with that person, or that these things can't be helped, right? It's something that people go through and experience, but there is help out there, right? And when it starts to interfere with our ability to live, to have relationships, is when we might consider that clinical depression, or when we might want to turn to a therapist or additional support.
Yeah, and I'm a witness to that because, again, I discovered in therapy the whole concept of seasonal depression, or yeah, seasonal depression, right? And for me, it's when that the day gets shorter, it's dark at like 5 o'clock. I'm telling you, my physical and mental, my whole soul shuts down. It's
Yeah.
like I feel dysfunctional because I feel like I have lost half my day. But now that I understand how it shows up and how it impacts me, there are things that I do proactively, right,
Right.
to help me. And before you know it, the season is over. Like now, the time's getting ready to go back, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
made it. I made it. I'm on the other
Exactly.
side. And I can't, like, I feel so productive. My energy level is like here, and
Mhm.
I'm out walking. Like, I'm super excited to have my days back
Yeah.
because at 5 o'clock, I feel like it's 10 o'clock at night. And I literally want to get in my pajamas and be done for the day,
Exactly. Right.
you
The
know?
day is over before you
Yeah,
know.
it's over. So, hallelujah to
Yeah.
springtime.
Yes.
But I want to talk about treatment plans, and I don't know that you can, whatever you can share will be helpful. I know that treatment plans are unique to the individual, but can you give us a sense of like what you do in terms of forming and shaping treatment plans for people?
Yep. So another misconception is that therapy is just talking, right? That there's no plan or space, or therapy is just reflecting, right? A lot of people, largely thanks to media, right, see a therapist as maybe as like a Freudian therapist of you're sitting on a couch and just relaying your dreams, and the therapist has no personality. They're just sitting there. You spend an hour and you leave, and they're like, what was this, right? And I definitely come from the newer school of therapeutic practice, again, that has a more holistic approach, has a more relational approach to it. And part of that is working towards goals. And that's what treatment goals are really there and made for.
Mhm.
So part of the role of the therapist is to work with their clients to figure out what are the things that they'd like to see different about their lives. Again, based off of what the things they're struggling, how is that affecting the other areas of their lives? What do we want to be different? What do we want to change? I often ask what I would maybe call like a miracle question. If you were to
Mm,
wake up tomorrow and the things that are bothering you today did not exist, past, what would be different about your life? How would you know that this miracle has occurred? And based off of that response, we then form goals based off of that, right? Whether that's, I want a better relationship with my family. I want to go after things that I stop myself from doing based off fear. I want to be able to process that experience that is really staying with me that I haven't been able to fully accept.
Mhm.
And then we work on creating objectives around that goal, right? So, what is it actually going to take in order for us to achieve that? So, if we want to build relationships with our family, it's not that we're just thinking about like, okay, let's do that, let's talk about that, but we're also thinking, what is it going to take to build relationship with our families? Maybe that's going to be addressing some unspoken things that have happened in our family and in that relationship with that person.
Mhm.
Maybe it's creating smaller goals towards achieving some of the things that we've always wanted to go after, right? If we've always wanted to, let's say, be an X-ray technician, but we don't have our GED or we've yet
Mhm.
to go to college, right? We're going to sit together and really think about what is it going to take to get us to that next step. And then most importantly, we're also going to talk about barriers because that's another
Mm.
key piece that I think folks don't think
Mm.
about. What has
Right.
prevented you from achieving these goals thus far? What
Right.
gets in the way of you taking even the smallest step towards change? And until we're really able to address that, we're not really going to make any progress. And I think, having that therapeutic space is also recognizing that everyone is on their own journey towards change. People
Mhm.
can have the greatest thoughts and ideas about creating change in their life, but sometimes the reality is we're not ready. Maybe
Mm.
we're in a pre-contemplative stage where we're thinking about change. I think this is something that I want, but I don't know if I'm really ready to take that step, right? And again, therapy is the place to really go through those level of change. Or, sometimes it's even, I don't even want to change this, but everyone in my life keeps saying that this is something that I should be working on. So I'm coming to this space to just talk about it. What is that like for folks to have this idea about who you should be or how you should be? Is this something that's really affecting your life, right? And working through all the things that may come up. And as my role, it's something to just hold and create space for to hold central throughout our work
Mhm.
as we move forward.
Mhm. I love that you said that because therapy doesn't always have to be about trauma,
Right.
right? That you went through this traumatic experience. But if you feel that there's something that's holding you back
Hmm.
from creating or living the life that you envision for yourself, that you desire, that you want, or holding you back from joy or happiness or whatever, that's a good time to have that initial conversation too. Because, like you said, the experience, it's really like peeling away an onion. You come in for this, but then you learn about this and this and this and this and this. So I think that's a great point that you don't have to engage a therapist because you've had a traumatic experience. It could be for a multitude of reasons
Exactly.
that you do that.
Yep.
So tell us about the IFS telehealth. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Telehealth
Collective.
online therapy. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So it's a basically a collective of therapists who are going into private practice together. Internal family systems therapy, or IFS, is a newer mode of practice, and it's something that is really picking up a lot of steam. Once folks really understand it and learn about it, it's something that they want to engage in.
Mhm.
However, there isn't a ton of therapists who offer it, and or the therapists that do offer it, their caseloads are full and they aren't accepting new clients. And so our
Mhm.
thought and idea was banding together therapists who do have open availability and spots to be able to offer this great practice and service.
Mhm.
I especially think it's important. You kind of mentioned earlier about finding that right fit.
Mhm.
Folks of color, I want to pause for a second. I was going to say need therapy, and I do believe that, but I think there's so much benefit from engaging in therapy, right? However, fit of therapist is important, and
Yeah.
you are going to get a different experience, especially if you're talking about themes such as race, family. When you have someone in the practice feels so much better when someone speaks your language, right?
Mhm,
I've
mhm.
heard this said by another woman whose native tongue was Polynesian. And she said when she found another Polynesian therapist, to be able to speak her experience in her native tongue changed her experience of therapy altogether. And I think that that is really important, to be able to have a therapist who speaks your tongue, right?
Mhm.
Who not necessarily has shared your experience, because folks of color are not a monolith and we don't all go through the same things, but having someone who you feel understood by, who
Right.
maybe has had some similar experiences and upbringing, or who has that knowing, is so important. And so I think it's really important that we have folks of color in all therapeutic communities, but I'm especially proud to be a Black woman providing internal family systems therapy.
Yeah. And so what is the access experience like? So if I want to, I went to the website, by the way, and I'm like, don't be surprised if my name shows up on a list somewhere, because I just thought this is fabulous.
Yeah.
But describe the access
Yeah.
process.
So I definitely recommend for folks to check out that website if you're looking to learn little bit more. The first step is we have a really great care coordinator on our team named Jen. And so that first step is to set up a consultation with Jen, where she will kind of explain who we are, what services we provide, kind of get a understanding of, again, what's bringing you into this practice, what are some of your things you're looking for, if you're familiar with telehealth and able to and comfortable with telehealth services, because this is a completely online service.
Mhm.
And then she'll kind of navigate you to the states that we're offering services in. I'm in New York. So after that, if you'd like to, we also offer consultations with different therapists. So again, I really encourage people to shop around, find that right fit, right?
Mhm.
And one of the ways of doing that is we offer free 20-minute consultations meetings with
Mm.
all of the therapists of that state that you're eligible in, or live in. And so you can set up those consultations, meet with different therapists, see who maybe you click the most with, or really spoke to you and your experience. And then from there, you speak with that therapist to set up appointments and move forward with services.
And give us the website address.
Yes. So it is IFS Therapy Online. So IFSTherapyOnline.com.
Okay, great. So before we wrap up, there's two more questions that I want to pose to you. For people who are listening who might be on the fence, they just need a little bit more encouragement. They have a sense or a feeling that, you know what, maybe I do need to have a conversation with someone, but yet they're just a little hesitant. Give a
Mhm.
word of encouragement to that person.
The biggest thing that I will say is, what do you have to lose? Right.
Mhm.
Um, you can go on, and again, I think that there are many situations that folks with the right supports can get through on their own. However, oftentimes we recognize, or when we're in that place of realizing we're not talking and we're not reaching out to the people that may be supportive, or again, the people that are usually our supports are the ones that we're having the most challenging challenges with, or again, we're going through a difficult life transition and we want somebody who's all to ourselves, who won't have thoughts or opinions about the way that I really feel about this. It can be so helpful to have that neutral space, to have a space where you can really bring your full self. And what do you have to lose, right? You meet with someone, maybe you decide it's not for you, and
Right.
then you could at least say, I tried. I went out there, I found somebody, I talked to somebody, and it was or was not for me. But I definitely recommend taking that step forward, making that small step towards change and toward healing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on try it. If it doesn't work for you, or if that particular therapist doesn't work for you, then try someone else. I met with maybe 4 or 5 therapists over, I want to say, a 5-year period before I connected with the woman that I'm going to be making an appointment with, because it's been way too
Yeah.
long. To meet with her again. But Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us today. I'm asking all of my guests this question. What does living in the good space mean for you?
Yeah, I love this question. Living in the good space for me means balance.
Mm,
I think it's so important to create balance in our lives. One day, we may need to sit on that couch and binge watch that Netflix show while eating
yes,
half a pizza and some ice cream,
yes.
right? And then the next day, we might need to get out there and go take a walk, meet up with some friends, be a little social. I've really been working in my own life to create that balance and listen to my body, to my mind, and really give it and support what it needs, right? And giving myself that permission to do so, right? Even if it means things that might be counterintuitive to what they tell us is healthy,
Mhm.
but finding that space and time to dedicate towards healing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that. I joined this challenge to walk 40 miles by the end of March. And
Ooh,
so, it's early in the process, right? What is
yeah,
today? The 12th?
yeah,
But the other day, I just could not get myself together. And so initially, I started with the negative self talk, right? You're only 7 days in and you're already, missing a day, blah, beating myself up. And then I was like, wait a minute, my body is saying, I'm not ready to walk. So I went, I made myself a cup of tea and I sat and I crocheted. I just taught myself how to crochet. And I crocheted for about an hour. And then I felt my energy shift, threw my
mhm,
sneakers on and went out and took the walk. So I share that because I love when you said give yourself permission. Learned to give myself permission to listen to my mind, my body, and my soul
yeah,
without judgment,
yeah,
without beating myself up. And I catch myself when I get into that negative self-talk.
mhm,
Literally catch myself. And when you
yeah,
do that, when you practice that, when you commit to it, it does it's my new norm.
yeah, exactly.
It's my new norm. Olivia Curl, wow. Thank you so much. I love your energy. Thank you for sharing your time, being generous with your time today, because I know how busy you are, but just sharing in a way that I know my listeners are going to be able to hear and to receive. And I just thank you. I thank you for the work that you're doing. If no one has said thank you for showing up, Black woman, in this space to
Mhm.
help women heal, I say thank you today.
Oh, no, thank you as well. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this experience. And I'm so glad and grateful to be able to offer this out to your listeners, and be a person that maybe one of the first people that they see are in this field, doing this work, and that health and healing is possible.
Yes, so everybody go out, check out that website, check out Olivia's bio and profile, and I encourage you, if you want to be seen and heard just for a brief moment, check it out. Give her a call. Thank you so much,
Thank
Olivia.
you.
Take care.